Thanks for coming back to Behind the Culture with head coach Jim Flannery. Coach, gotten a lot of positive reviews from our fans, and the first thing that I was asked is, can we have some different questions? They wanted somebody, not necessarily somebody else to ask them, but they wanted to have input on the questions. So what I will encourage you to do, if you're watching, and we'll put a tag, send your questions to me, to my email, and we'll try to get them in with Coach Flannery, have a little bit more fan interaction so that they can ask you a question or two. Before we delve into some of the deeper ones, let's talk a little bit about the run that this team has been on. Since we last talked, a couple more victories, defeated Providence, defeated Seton Hall last night. And what impresses me about this team is that you get it done in different ways with different people. If I'd have told you going into the game the list of players who would have struggled from the field, it would have been something that you would have wanted a 40-point game or a 30-point game, but we didn't have that. We had a lot of balanced scoring from different people, and that helped us beat the Pirates last night.
Yeah, it was a weird box score. I mean, Molly and Kennedy and Mal were, I think, 0 for 18. And they're all good players, but that's basketball. Sometimes you just have a night where the ball doesn't go in and you miss your first couple and you get a little sideways. And, I think the good thing is they all still contributed. I mean, you don't have to make baskets to play well. That's what I try to tell my ninth grade son. It's like, it's not just about putting the ball in the basket. If you don't turn the ball over, if you rebound, if you have positive energy, if you're, if you defend with intelligence and play hard, all those things can contribute to your team winning. So, but it was a weird that those three had 0 field goals and we still led by 25 points with 5 minutes to go in the game. I never would have thought that, but again, Jamie made shots, Brooke made shots, Lauren, Morgan. So it's not going to be the same people. We put a lot of pressure, obviously, on Lauren and Morgan to make shots every game, but and they get the most opportunities. We have the most. If Morgan hasn't touched it a few possessions, we can run a play for her. We can run a play for Lauren. Those two have the most plays run for them, but with those other people, it's they don't have the ball as much. But yeah, just the way it worked out. It was like either somebody was making a lot of shots or none at all. And but to your point, you got to win different ways, and that's the way we won against Providence isn't the way that we won against Seton Hall, and the way that we win games going forward isn't it's not always the same recipe.
How does the approach change that second time you play a team during season? Obviously, in conference play, you typically play every team at least twice. We're absolutely destined to play Seton Hall a third time because we've done it for 5 straight years. But that second time through, what changes?
Well, I think what I say a lot, whether it's regard to our team or preparation, is you want to react. You don't want to overreact. So certainly some of the things that applied and hurt you in the first game or that were successful for you in the first game there's going to be some carryover, but you can't get too drawn into it because, again, Molly had a really good game at Seton Hall. So you can't go in saying, oh, we got to really emphasize Molly because what if the ball just isn't going in for her that night? And Lauren, conversely really struggled at their place the first game. She was 3 for 14. Last night she was the opposite. So, but you do want to take some things. You say, okay, well, one of the areas we were really good against them the first game is we handled their press really well. We didn't turn the ball over a lot. We actually had more steals than them in the first game. So I said, we have to have ball security. The teams that have struggled against them are teams that turn the ball over. On the flip side, we didn't rebound well against them the first time, and then last night we beat them by 15 on the glass. So, I think you definitely take some things from the game. I think your players obviously, have a little bit better grasp on what they can and can't do, and new players, Jada Eads, the really good freshman guard from Seton Hall. Well, that's the first time they'd seen her a month ago, and to see her last night, you're just a little bit more familiar with her. You're just a little bit more familiar with Masonis, who is a transfer. So, and they have the same familiarity or greater familiarity. So, I don't know. Like I said, I think you want to reference the first game and say, here are the things that we did well, here are the things where we need to get better. But the game plays out differently. You know, to go back to Providence, you know, the first game at Providence is 26-23 at half. Neither team could throw it in the ocean. And then, you know, we played them the other day. It was 22-22 at the end of the first quarter. So basically the first quarter score was about the halftime score of the first game. So games play out differently. And that's why what you said earlier about just you have to find different ways to win. You have to be resilient. You have to be able to make some in-game adjustments too, because, again, they might have changed how they're going to defend Morgan, or they might defend some things differently, and we have to adjust in-game. And that's what's nice about having an older team and a deep team, a team where Jamie can come on, you know, and make the difference that she did last night, and then Brooke can come off the bench and make the difference that she did last night. So you're not just putting pressure on your top, or, you know, your starting group or your 6 highest minutes players.
We're in the 23rd game of the season, and in the interviews last night, you mentioned that you had used a lineup that you had never used before, having Jamie on the floor, Brooke on the floor, and Morgan all at the same time. How often does that happen this late in the season, that not forced by an injury or not forced by an outside factor, that you use a unique lineup for more than a minute or two?
Yeah, not too often. I think I've gotten more comfortable doing that, honestly, over the last few years. Just COVID changed a lot of things. It just changed you, because your lineup, boy, you're like, okay, who's going to play? Who's going to be available to play this Friday? So you're like, you just think a little differently. You think a little bit more outside the box. You're maybe a little less hostage to some of your previous thinking about what a lineup should look like. And, you know, the fact was, you know, we had some people who weren't shooting the ball well, and I was like, you know, I thought, gosh, Jamie's really playing well. Brooke played well in the first half. Let's let those guys go a little bit with Morgan. And, you know, it's something that you look at in practice a little bit, because you're kind of constantly mixing and matching in practice based on, you know, Molly's ankle's sore today. We got to kind of limit her reps. Or Kiani just had an ankle injury, and so we had to limit her, you know, a little bit in practice. So you tinker with different lineups, and you know. But yeah, the great thing is I think it's something that we can look at going forward. Is, you know, I think Brooke's done a better job of taking care of the ball lately. I think that helps, and Jamie's confidence continues to soar. So, but as far as, yeah, do you get to February and you try a lineup that you've never tried, really up to now, without, like you said, without an injury or severe foul issues? It doesn't happen too often.
All right, let's switch gears a little bit. Over the last couple of weeks, you've done some TV interviews, and they've asked you how you got into coaching women's basketball. And your answer is that you sort of fell in. And while that's true, I also know that you don't do this for 35 years because you fell in, because it was an accident. And so I'm going to push you a little bit, Coach.
Sure.
What if you fell into coaching out of college, what kept you in with the hours? Because for those of you who may not know, Coach is in here usually at 6 a.m. watching. Oh, first of all, he's playing noon ball, what's called noon ball at 6 a.m. And then he's in here working, and he's here, like as an example, last night we were here till 10, 11 o'clock, and it's not a lot of sleep. It's a lot of time away from your family, and it's not like you're paid in the millions of dollars. So why do you do it?
Well, it is true. I fell into it a little bit, but that's only part of the story. I mean, the truth is I loved sports from the time I was, 5 or 6 years old. I played, you played football in the fall, you played baseball in the summer, you played basketball in the winter, and I threw some golf in there. And so I wanted to do something in sports, and I actually was a journalism major to begin with and thought I wanted to do something, cover sports in some way. And then I got a chance to coach, and I just kind of fell in love with it. And it's not perfect. Every day is not perfect. I think the things that keep me attracted to it are, it does change. It's like, if you want to stay competitive and good, you've got to be willing to. You got to be stubborn about some things, about some of the of your core values and some of the things that you are going to require and demand of players and staff. But you also have to change. I mean, anybody who's been in athletics, if you talk to anybody who's continues to coach after 20 years or 30 years, they've had to change because kids have changed, expectations have changed. The way you can talk to parents and deal with parents, that's changed. So you got to be willing to do that. I love the creative side. I love the fact that, like you just said, hey, you tried a lineup you hadn't tried before. I love that you get to do some things like that where you have to think outside the box. You have to, I talked about COVID. Just, as much as that was a challenging year, I feel like I grew because you had to think outside the box. You had to maybe do some things, stretch yourself in a way that you've never been stretched, and the camaraderie I think with coaches is and players is just such a blessing, to be able to come in every day and ask them about their families when you start a meeting and okay, what's going on. Jalen, it seems like, is always sick this time of year, so I always used to say, Jalen, how you feeling? She's the youngest one on staff. But and then you hunker down and you try to figure out how you're going to win a game in 2 days or 3 days or whatever it is, and so that part of it is great. And as much as you hate losing, that we're going to hate losing Morgan and Lauren and Molly and Mal and Jamie and Brooke and Sydney, that the turnover of roster is somehow gets you. It's like spring, when when the winter ends and you've enjoyed all of that, but like there's also something new about having a new roster and having different challenges the next season based on who you have. So I think I like the fact that there's enough stability within the everyday, but there's also some change and some things that require you to change. And the other part is, I think, for me, going from basically half my career as a head coach was in the Missouri Valley and half has been in the Big East. And I think the Big East, changing to the Big East was really good for me personally and professionally because it was like a new challenge without all the new surroundings. So I felt like it was, you had to learn, different programs, different styles of play, different travel. So it had a lot of new challenges, but also the comfortability of still being at Creighton.
So your path to where we are is somewhat similar to mine in many ways, except I was never a coach. The journalism background, we talked about being pre-law. What kept you away from going down the path of being a lawyer?
I don't know. I just couldn't commit to it, and I think I talked to some people, and they, the feedback you got was that it was okay, but I don't know, and maybe it's who you talk to, but I just couldn't commit to it. I had thought that that's maybe what I wanted to do, and maybe I thought that that's what I should do instead of what I wanted to do. And like you said, when I got an opportunity to volunteer coach a couple of years, I'm like, well, geez, this seems like it's something that I would really enjoy. And so I think that was a big part of it. Plus, you get to dress kind of as is. But I always tell people, Glenn, in my next life, I'm going to come back as a sports information director, something that's even more numbersy than what I am, because I am a numbers nerd. Mm-hmm. I'm a, kind of a math geek. So if I do come back in a different life, I think it might be as either an SID or some sort of actuarial science major.
I'm never coming back as a coach. I will tell you that. The idea of recruiting and what you guys go through just doesn't appeal to me. But when I was growing up in high school, I was pre-law, and then I went to college and was pursuing a philosophy and politics major similar to what you pursued.
Yeah. I
did an internship for a law firm and decided the only type of law I really had any interest in was criminal or constitutional law. And part of it, and I say this, I couldn't deal with being wrong. The moral implications of being wrong. If I defended somebody who was innocent and I lost, or if I prosecuted somebody who was guilty and lost, or vice versa. That was what pushed me away from the law, and the fact that I had a lot more fun writing stories about basketball, soccer, and whatnot, and that's what led me. So it's interesting to hear what led you away from the law. I want to close up today's episode with a little bit more fun. Over the years, traveling with baseball and traveling with yourself, I've heard stories. I never had the distinction of being on a bus trip with a former bus driver, but tell us your best story about Tim. Tim used to be the bus driver for both many of the sports, and there were some fun escapades I've heard about him pushing the envelope to get home through some icy storms like what we've had last night, where everybody hopefully got home safely.
Well, the first thing you know is that his nickname was Turbo Tim. So he was pushing the envelope. And gosh, I look back and I think about the times where, like you said, you're leaving Carbondale at 9:30 or 10 at night, and you're going to get back in Omaha at 7 in the morning, and it's drizzle, and it's going to turn to ice, and you're half sleeping and trying to sleep, and by God, he got you home at 7. But I do know we were in Columbia, Missouri one time. We went down to play in Missouri's tournament, and they actually ended up having to push the tournament back because they had so much snow and ice the first night. I think it was supposed to be a Friday, Saturday tournament. We ended up playing it Saturday, Sunday, and our bus got stuck kind of on an auxiliary road. So we were all, like 20-some of us were out pushing the bus out of the ditch in Columbia. No restaurants were open. I think another time we shut down somewhere. We were going south, somewhere in St. Joe's. We had to call for a different bus, and they had to drive a bus up from Kansas City to meet us in St. Joe. But all kinds of great stories. But yeah, Tim was iconic in terms of just being reliable, pushing through. And one other story, actually, we were at somewhere and then Southern Illinois, and then the following weekend we were going to Missouri State and Wichita. Mm-hmm. And we couldn't get out of Carbondale. Once we started playing, it snowed. The next day it snowed. We were stuck maybe in the St. Louis area. We just went straight to Wichita. So we were on the road for probably 10 straight days, playing 2 games, the second of which was at Southern, and then we played Wichita State and Missouri State on the next road trip. And we had some people bring some stuff down from Omaha to Kansas City to meet us. I don't know what, I can't even remember what, but just so we had enough reinforcements to play the back half. But it was a 4-game road trip over a course of about 9 days.
All right, well, Coach, I want to tease a little bit some of the future. We are going to do a Mount Rushmore, but I'm going to alter it a little bit because I thought it would be unfair for you to try and pick players. But what we're going to do is I want you to go through the Mount Rushmore, not today, of victories within your career.
Ooh, okay.
Best victories or top victories. And go beyond. I'm going to push you to go beyond just the NCAA tournament and beyond the Elite Eight run. So I'll limit you. You can only choose one victory within a season.
Okay.
So you can't go and back-to-back Iowa State, Colorado from that Elite Eight run. You got to choose one from each year and give us your top 4 or 5 victories. And maybe we'll also touch on most painful losses. We won't necessarily go into 4, but a couple of painful losses throughout your seasons and your career. And that's how we're going to tailor the Mount Rushmore rather than asking you to choose players or choose staff or anything else. That's how we're going to approach that one. And again, if you are interested in getting some questions, we'll either throw my email on this video or it'll be on social media. Feel free to send us some email questions that you'd like to hear Coach Flannery address, or some fun anecdotes that you'd like to hear him talk about on Behind the Culture with head coach Jim Flannery.